Guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, wherever you are in the world. Today it is the 19th of September 2018 at 8:59 over here in the UK. What you're looking at on screen, is a projection to the 28th of September 2018. On the screen is a hurricane on the East Coast. I am looking for that hurricane to be approaching or be along the East Coast, particularly around New York, come the 30th. This is an early projection over a week, so it's likely to change. Now, at the moment, I don't know if it's heading towards New York. It's lined up with New York. It is making movements towards the East Coast. But like Florence, it could go down south, North Carolina, South Carolina, even Florida or the Caribbean. It could go up north towards Maine, or it could even loop back on itself and dissipate. Putting all that to the side, if it does approach New York around the 30th, then that's the watch time I've got for London, New York, and Florida. Again, if it is around New York on the 30th, there may be a connection to the iPad Goat video with the hurricane, Statue of Liberty, and torch breaking. I think the interpretation for that would be during the hurricane, an underwater explosion which causes an earthquake connected to the lights and electricity going out, followed by a tsunami. And because the electricity has gone out, the warning would not come through TV or through media. People would be surprised by it if they haven't taken the action of getting to higher ground when they feel the earthquake. That tsunami that's generated there would obviously radiate outwards, maybe affecting the entire East Coast, also affecting the coastlines of the countries surrounding the Atlantic Basin, including the UK. A week prior to that, so if this happens on the 30th, a week prior to that, on the 23rd, in 4 days' time, London will be closing the Thames Barrier as part of their annual ceremony. And it could be that it's a week warning that we're getting there in terms of, we're going to do our little practice on the 23rd, closing the Thames Barrier, and then a week later, we're actually going to need it because there's a tsunami coming from the East Coast, which has been generated by an underwater explosion, which people think was an earthquake. Then after that, later on the 1st of October, late in the day, probably around 9 o'clock Hawaiian time, we have an eruption, possibly from Kilauea, a VEI-8 explosion, as big as it can get. That would definitely affect the Helena slump. We'd definitely get a landslide, and we'd definitely get a tsunami. I think it would be a mega tsunami, which I really don't know the height, but as taller than Big Ben. That seems to be the reference that they keep going for. So I'll use that one as well. Taller than Big Ben is what you're looking for. Big Ben is 93 meters, possibly double the height of that. I really couldn't tell you, but taller than Big Ben is the reference that they're going for. Now, if on the 1st of October that does happen at 9 o'clock, it would be a time difference of 3 hours between the two places. So it would be 9 o'clock here and 12 o'clock here. Now, in the iPad Goat video, I'm actually going to bring it up. I didn't bring it up, but I will. Give me a second. I can show you better when it's on screen. So this scene right here. So if an eruption happens in Hawaii on the 1st of October at 9 o'clock in the evening, let's say, or 9 o'clock in the morning, let's just say 9 o'clock, because I don't know morning or night. This video is deceptive. It could be nighttime because it's dark, or it could be just smoke covering the sky, so it could actually be daytime. But either way, 9 o'clock, eruption happens in Hawaii. There's a 3-hour time difference between Hawaii and the West Coast. So on the West Coast, it would be 12 o'clock, yeah? However, the tsunami itself would take around 2 hours to travel from the Hawaiian island, the big island, to the West Coast. So by the time the tsunami reached the West Coast, it would be 11 o'clock in Hawaii and 2 o'clock on the West Coast. Now, I think the clock tower tells us both things, because we have the clear reference to 12 o'clock here, and we have the small, almost invisible indentation around 2 o'clock. So eruption happens at 12 Pacific time, but 9 o'clock in Hawaii, and then 2 hours later, by 2 o'clock on the West Coast, but 11 o'clock in Hawaii, the tsunami has reached. And as you can tell, just from perspective, this would be the East Coast representation. So everything along here is the East Coast. The tsunami is coming from the west. So unless the tsunami is coming from inland to the west coast, this is actually referencing the west coast itself. So here's the tsunami coming from the west coast. We have the clock with reference to 12 and to 2, and that would be the time difference between the volcano erupting in Kilauea or in Hawaii and the tsunami reaching the west coast. That's my interpretation for that. And then so that would be on the 2nd of October. And then the next day would be the day that they had planned for the emergency alert test, which obviously if they've got it planned for the 3rd, then they could use it on the 2nd or the 1st, and not have to worry about suspicions as to why they're suddenly using it. They can say, oh, it was planned to be used already, it was scheduled. So you know how they like to schedule things and then make the real event happen. We've seen it multiple times. So just a quick recap, I think, on all that. Hurricane Kirk, meaning church, possibly approaching New York around the 30th, which is the 21st lunar day in the 8th lunar month. Also something possibly connected with London and Florida on that day. The next day, over to Kilauea, 9 o'clock eruption, 12 o'clock over here, 2 hours to travel tsunami, 11 o'clock over here, 2 o'clock over here. And then, obviously after that, we've got the war situation, which obviously, again, is lining up quite nicely because North Korea and South Korea have just declared, maybe symbolically or it could be officially, an end to the Korean War, which was going on for 65 years. Obviously not actually having war for 65 years, but that tension on the Korean Peninsula going on for 65 years, which has now just come to an end. So if we're looking for unity between South Korea and North Korea and them, running out under the peace flag trying to stop war, then we couldn't be, I don't think we could be in a better time at the moment. We're definitely looking at North Korea and South Korea unified under, they've marched under this white flag twice now, and now they're declaring an end to the war. So we've definitely got the peace situation going on here. Peace and safety, sudden destruction comes. We've got the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd coming up. I don't discount those days, not at all. But I have taken those days and just shifted them to the lunar calendar, which has put me a week later on the 30th of September to the 2nd of September. Sorry, the 30th of September to the 2nd of October. Waking up when September ends. The hunt for Red October. Those are some of the references I get when I'm doing this kind of research. So that's pretty much all I wanted to bring to you, apart from one last thing, and it's in association with the possible eruption. I do have my eyes on Kilauea because I think that's where it's coming from, but as I said yesterday in the VI8 reference, that's usually associated with supervolcanoes, which would be more connected to Yellowstone, as it is a supervolcano and, more likely to go an eruption at that level. So when I'm looking at Yellowstone, I'm seeing 100-foot cracks appearing, uplift, earthquakes. I can't even think of all the rest of the stuff. Then I see this, which is just rewind.
Okay. This is the Park Service! Get on the boardwalk! Oh my gosh, is he gonna jump in?
So just in case you guys haven't already sussed out what's going on in this video, there's a man standing on the edge of Old Faithful doing I don't know what, but you're going to see at one point he lies down, he's clearly peering into the crater, and I don't know what he's looking for.
What are you doing? What? Oh my gosh, what an idiot. Kids! On the boardwalk!
Hey, dude, get back over here!
Enough! Hey! Let's all 1, 2, 3! Up! Hold! Faithful! Oh my God, what is happening?
So weird things are just happening, you know. People, I just never heard of anything like that. People stepping into Old Faithful or leaning down to peer into it, you know. Solar observatory closing and all these sorts of other different things that are happening. It's all kind of giving you this indication that something is not quite right. And as I said, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd are watch days. I'm not discounting them at all, but I feel very strongly, even more strongly, about the 30th of September, the 1st of October, and the 2nd of October as being more of the connection to the 21, 22, and 23, particularly if we do have Hurricane Kirk or Church head into New York around that time. You guys, I'll keep an eye on it. I'll update you as necessary. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.